Hi darlings, Mimi G here with another tutorial as part of the Mimi G for Michael Levine collaboration. Today we're going to be doing McCall's 7262. I love this sweater, so let's get started. This pattern can be made out of a double knit, any kind of sweater knit, really any kind of knit will work really well, but the chunkier the sweater knit, the better. I think it kind of gives the neck a little bit of volume, so if you can find a heavier knit to work with, that would be fantastic. You're going to need the usual suspects. If you're new to sewing or you need a refresher course, feel free to follow along with the video in the description box below where I talk about all of the sewing basics, like the sewing tools you're going to need, how to lay out your pattern pieces, how to cut out your pattern pieces, how to cut your fabric, how to read the information that is on your pattern pieces. View that video, then come back and follow along with me. Once you've gotten all your sewing tools together, you're of course going to need the pattern, and we're going to be making view B, so you're also going to need 3 buttons, at least 3/4 of an inch or 1 inch. I would use a 1 inch button just because I like a larger button, but 3/4 of an inch would be great. And you're also going to need a snap because this snaps from your shoulder to the tip of one of the fronts, so you're going to need 1 snap and 3 buttons. I of course link to the fabric that I'm using and options in the blog post, so make sure and also click that link in the description box below. Let's go over the pattern pieces that you should have cut. For view B, you're going to need to cut out this very large pattern piece, which is pattern piece number 1, and you're then going to also cut out pattern piece number 2, which is the back. The back is cut on the fold. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 5, which is our sleeve, and you're going to cut out pattern piece number 3, which are the front bands. You're going to need to cut 2 of these, and you're also going to interface them. Now here's just my own personal preference. I don't want my band to be any different than the weight of my fabric, so I'm not going to interface my bands. I am simply going to interface the 3 areas where the buttonholes are going to be created, like I've done here. Now you can do that, or you can choose to interface the entire front bands. That is completely up to you. I just wanted to share my personal option. Once you've got all of your pattern pieces cut, we can start sewing. Alright, we're going to start with our front pieces, and as you noticed, there was kind of a weird shape here. You know, we have this kind of L shape here, and then we have a dot. Now I want you to cut into that dot. If you look at it on your pattern piece, you should have a little dot, and so you're going to just slip right into that. And then we're going to sew our neck together, so it's the 2 sides that have the 3 notches. So pin at your notches first to make sure that you're sewing the right side. Right sides are facing each other. And we're going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you have a serger, I would suggest using your serger for this project. You want to have nice, clean, finished edges because the inside is going to show in certain places, so you want to make sure that you can finish off your seam allowances nicely. Now you can go ahead and serge this seam allowance. Once you have the neck sewn and serged the way I have here, we're going to attach this to our back piece. So go ahead and grab your back piece. And we're going to be working at the neck. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pin right sides facing our neck on the front to the neck on our back. Now this is what the front of your neck looks like. So we're going to use the center of our neckband to put onto the center of the back neck. And we're going to pin there. And then I want you to match the notch on your shoulder. And we're going to pin and pin. And the reason that we snip into that dot is because we need it to go around this corner here. So I'm going to pin. And I'm going to pin at the corner. So now we have like this little cutout here. And that's what we want, because we're going to sew across and then around this curved neck and then over to the other side. So pin the other side the same exact way. And now we're going to go ahead and sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to sew across the shoulder and then pivot when we get to that little cutout. Okay, so I am right at that corner. I'm just going to pivot a little bit and continue sewing. And now, if you have a serger, go ahead and finish off this seam allowance of the neck. If you don't have a serger, you can always use the zigzag stitch setting on your sewing machine. Now the instructions have you set in your sleeve, but because we're working with a knit, I hate inserting my sleeves by easing it in versus just the flat method. So I'm going to do the flat method. And what that means is we're going to attach our sleeve prior to sewing our sides. So what you want to do is, this is the arm's eye, right? This is where the sleeve is going to go. And here's my sleeve. With right sides facing, I'm going to pin that notch that you should have, or that little snip that I always make at the center of my sleeve, which is where my shoulder falls, to the shoulder seam. And I'm going to pin. And then I'm going to align my double notches. So there should be a double notch on your sleeve and also a double notch on your sweater. The double notch to double notch lets you know that you're pinning the back of the sleeve to the back of your sweater. And the single notch lets you know that you're pinning the single notch on your sweater to the single notch on your sleeve for the front. And we're going to sew this starting at one end, sewing 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to continue to sew around your sleeve. I've gotten to my shoulder and I'm going to continue down the other side, and you're going to attach both your sleeves the same way. Now I have a flat sleeve, and you're going to attach the other sleeve the same exact way. Then you're going to serge off your seam allowances, and then we're going to sew down our sides in one continuous seam from our sleeve to the hem of our sweater. Okay, once you have serged your seam allowances on your sleeve, we're going to pin under the arm. So match those seams under your arm. And you're going to pin there first. Then I'm going to have you pin along the arm. Right sides are facing, of course. Maybe pin another pin along the middle of your sleeve, right? And now we're going to go all the way down the side of our jacket, and you're going to pin and sew these side seams the same exact way. So the same way we're about to do it now, you're going to do the other side the same exact way. I'm going to pin one more time. And then starting at the hem, so we're going to start at the bottom, we're going to sew all the way up to the underarm, and then we're going to pivot and sew all the way down the sleeve. Okay, I am under my sleeve, the underarm of my sleeve, and I'm going to pivot and continue sewing down my sleeve. You're going to pin and sew your other side seam the same way, and then you're going to serge all the way from your sleeve down your side seam. If you need to do some pressing, go ahead and press your side seams. And now, before we move any further, we're going to sew the hem of our sweater. So across the entire bottom of our sweater, we're going to be doing a double fold. So we're going to turn under 1/4 of an inch, and then we're going to turn over again 1/2 inch. And we're going to sew all the way around close to the edge. Okay, now we're going to do our front bands. And so what you're going to do is, as I have done with one already, is you're going to turn it right sides facing, and you're going to sew across both ends. And then you're going to turn it to the right side, and you're going to fold it in half, and you're going to press it all the way down so that the right side of the fabric, of course, is now facing you. And you're going to do that for both bands. So I'm going to fold mine in half, right sides facing, and I'm going to sew 5/8 of an inch across the top. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. I'm going to fold it in half. Going to turn it over and go ahead and give this a good press, and you're going to do both of your bands the same way, and then we're going to attach our bands to the front of our sweater. Okay, we're going to attach our front band to our front of the sweater, and I'm going to start at the hem. And you would have noticed that on your band there was one end that was completely flat and one end that had a slight slant. The part that had the side that had the slant goes on the bottom. So I'm going to pin at my hem, right sides facing, and I'm going to align it so that they both end at the same place, and I'm going to pin there. I don't want that to move on me. And you're going to pin a couple more places along this band just to make sure that all of your edges are aligned. And as you reach the top, you're going to notice that the band is much shorter than your sweater. That's because we have this collar that we're going to fold over. There was a fold line on your pattern that you should have taken note of. And there is a notch on your band that corresponds to a notch on your sweater. So we're going to find our notches and we're going to pin there. And then at that fold line, we're going to sandwich our band. So I'm going to have you fold it over at that fold line, and I'm going to have you pin. And you're going to see that the notch aligns on the sweater along with the notch on the band and on this collar. So we're going to pin all layers. Then continue pinning along the length. And then starting at the hem, we're going to sew all the way up, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to sew through all layers when we reach the collar. And now you're going to see when you turn over, we have a nice clean finish on both sides. But before you do that, I want you to go ahead and serge this entire seam allowance, and then you're going to turn it, and you're going to stitch close to the edge. You want to make sure that you're catching your seam allowance, so it should be facing the sweater, not the edge of your band. and you're going to sew very close to that edge just so that we can keep our band flat. You're going to do the same thing to both bands. Okay, once you have finished both your bands and you have given them a good press and you have serged and done your top stitching, we're going to go ahead and press the remaining part of our collar all the way across. And what you're going to notice is you're going to bring your center back on the neck to the center back that is already sewn together. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew just across this little neck edge so that we could keep our collar down on the inside without it shifting or moving. So what we're going to do is, now that we have folded over our collar, we're just going to stitch right along the edge, just along the neckline, through all layers. Now when you look at the inside of your sweater, you see that we have now stitched down the entire neck edge so that it won't open or move. And if you would like, you could slip stitch the rest of it down, but I'm just going to let it be loose. And now once we've done that, there's just a couple more steps that we need to do, and then we're going to be all done. Okay, now we're going to do the hem of our sleeve. And we're going to do the same thing that we did along the bottom. We're going to do a double fold. And we're going to sew close to the folded edge. You're going to do the other sleeve hem the same way. So what you want to remember is that every sewing machine does buttonholes differently, and I don't know what machine you're using, so you're going to need to refer to your instruction manual that came with your sewing machine on making your buttonholes. Once you make your buttonholes, you're going to hand sew your buttons at these 3 markings, so you have 3 buttonholes. And then the very last thing you're going to do after doing that is you're going to need to attach a snap. Now what you're going to do is you're going to attach the snap to the side that you're not attaching buttonholes to, or making buttonholes on. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a snap, and on the inside you're going to stitch it down, and then you're going to stitch the other end to the shoulder seam on the inside. So this is the band that I am not making buttonholes on. I'm going to just show you really quickly. I'm going to make a couple stitches. You should do this a little more neatly than I am doing here for the sake of this tutorial. And you would do that on all the openings that are on your snap. Once you do that, on this side, on the inside of the opposite shoulder, so not the same shoulder of the side that we are attaching that snap to, but to the opposite shoulder, you want to take the other end of your snap, place it right in the middle of that shoulder seam, and you're going to stitch down the same way that you did your other snap, and you're going to stitch this one down to your shoulder. That way when you put it on, you snap that end to this shoulder snap, and then you make your button, or you put your buttons through your buttonholes, I should say, and then you have the look that is shown in view A. If you would like to wear it open, and make no buttonholes at all, you can also do that. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. You are all done. That's all there is to it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Until next time, peace.